Well, it is an honor to be back with you guys. Last time I was at Lipscomb, I got a parking ticket when I spoke. So that was a first. Got back and they were like, thanks for coming, $12. I didn't even pay it. I was like, whatevs. I live on the edge of life, the boundaries, if you will. But I do live here. I live right down the street in Franklin. Love Nashville. We've been here about 3 years. But I will say that since we moved here, my jeans have gotten tighter. I don't know if that was your experience. They met me at the city limits with like a pair of skinny jeans when we moved to Nashville. But I haven't gotten so far as to wear an unnecessary scarf yet. And that's when you wear a scarf with a short sleeve t-shirt. It's a very confusing body temperature message that you're telling the world. Because essentially you're saying, my neck is so cold I need a scarf, but my arms are too hot for sleeves. And so I haven't gotten that far yet. I don't go to the well yet. I'll probably get some yoga pants at some point and go do that. Because I think that'd be fun to get some sort of drink doing that. But I love Nashville because of the music scene here. I think secretly I always wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be that guy I went to camp with. If you went to Christian camp, did you have the guy that had the acoustic guitar with him? And he would always materialize around a campfire. And he always pretended he didn't know he had the guitar with him, right? He was always like, oh, it's on my back. I didn't even know I had that. I know 3 chords and 4 Chris Thomas songs. Don't worry, ladies, we'll make out. Don't worry. I wanted to be that guy. And he had a Jeep, and I had to ride in the youth group van that always caught on fire. And I really wanted to be him. And then I kind of wanted to be a worship leader because they just do the most amazing things to me. I mean, worship leaders are able to do something called talk singing, which I'm not able to do. And that's when you'll go to church, and they'll be kind of playing their guitar lightly, and they'll be telling you a story and say, my wife and I were having coffee this weekend, and we just realized everyone needs forgiveness. Whoa. We were just in a story, about coffee, and now we're in a magical song. If a speaker does that, it's really awkward. If in the middle of what I'm talking about, I'm like, he gives and takes. That's weird. That wouldn't be good. Nobody would clap or be excited about that. That'd be a bad situation. And so that's the kind of stuff I think about a lot and stuff I write about. I sometimes write about when I was in college, the most popular thing to do at the college I went to was to dump whoever you were dating after a church retreat. I don't know if that ever happened to you. It was wildly popular at the school I went to. And you know why it happens, right? I mean, you go on a church retreat, and then on Saturday night, which is the Cry Fest portion of the retreat, they call it sloppy agape. They get the waterworks going. And the youth minister will say, you got to give some up for God tonight right here at the foot of the cross. And you kind of Google your head and your heart, and like, what can I give up? What can I give up? Bing! My boyfriend, yeah. Especially if he didn't go on the retreat. If you're away for 48 hours worshiping Jesus and he's at home playing Xbox, you start to think, that's sweaty heathen. It is on Donkey Kong when I get home. And you and all your girlfriends make a breakup pact, and you're like, we're doing it this time for Jesus, we're doing it. And you get home, you call them up and say, the retreat was amazing. I really grew. I don't think we should date anymore. And he says, you grew? You were gone for 48, you were in Chattanooga. Where did you grow that I didn't grow? You say, well, I just don't think God wants me to date people named you. And you throw the God card to get out of the relationship. That's always a good one, right? I mean, I went to Stanford University in Birmingham, Alabama. It was a Baptist school. And girls used to say things like this: I'm not dating anyone right now, I'm dating God. Which made me always feel so I need to get you to dump sweet baby Jesus just to go to the Outback. I just want a blooming onion. We're going to get Yahweh in the mix of our blooming onion? That's intense. That's a heavy situation. And so these are the things I've been writing about for a few years. And along the way, other stuff started to happen. This idea I had, this stuff Christians like, started to grow a little. And I got to go speak places. And I got to write a book. But I had a problem. And the problem was I had a day job. I was in an IT department. I had a cubicle. And so I had this dream, this thing I'd bumped into that I felt called to do, but I had the real world, being an adult on this other side, and I started to feel that tension. I started to feel stuck there. And I started to realize that problem in other people's lives. I'll talk to people and ask them what they do, and they'll kind of tell me their I'm but story. They'll say, I'm a teacher, but I want to be an artist. I'm an accountant, but I want to start my own business. I'm a blank, I want to be a blank. And there's a lot of us that feel that. I see that at college campuses all the time. I'll go speak at a college and somebody will come up and they'll say, hey, everybody always told me I'd be an amazing lawyer, but now I'm a junior and I can see law school on the edge, and I don't want to be a lawyer. I inherited my major and my dream from my mom, and the deeper I get into that, the more I realize it's not what I really feel called to do. What do I do? And it's a good question. What do you do? I mean, because this is the point of life where you're making some of these big decisions. And we put a lot of pressure on you. Culture puts so much pressure on college students. They say, best years of your life, best years of your life, as if the rest are, no. Like 32 is horrible. Your bones get brittle. Oh, it's not good. I can barely see you with my eyes. Or they'll tell you these things. They'll say, hey, go to Europe while you can. Travel abroad while you can. As if maybe Europe is closed when you're in your 30s. Like you'll go over there and they'll go, oh, I'm sorry, you're 32. You have to go to Branson, Missouri. You don't have access to Italy. Oh, ciao. And there's this pressure. And then every college brochure you see is the same, right? It's really attractive people with nice teeth on a double bike in the quad. La, 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 la. Best time of our life. And you go, I'm a sophomore. Does the best happen junior year? Because it's not, like, it hasn't happened yet. Like, is it senior year? Is that where it gets best? Because right now it feels kind of heavy. Right now it feels kind of weighty. So what do you and I do in moments like that? When we know we were created for more than ordinary, when we know we are created for more than average or common, where does God come into that discussion? What can we do? I think there's two things we need to do, and that's what I want to talk about today. And the first thing you need to do is listen for the little moments. You see, most of us want figuring out our calling or our passion, however you say it, we want it to be like God hits us with a lightning bolt, with this huge eureka moment. You're walking across campus and boom, beekeeping. Yeah. I'm supposed to be a beekeeper. I feel it in my heart, in my core, which I work out relentlessly. I'm a beekeeper. I mean, I've always appreciated honey as a concept on toast, but now I want to be around bees. I want to get a beard with braids and have smoke and be a weird farmer. Bees. God has given me my purpose. But that's not how it happens. And when it doesn't happen that way, we try to discover it. And we ask these big discovery questions. And we go, what do I want to be when I grow up? What do I want to do after college? Should I go to grad school? Should I change my major? Should I start my own nonprofit? Should I volunteer one? And in that moment, there's 1,000 options. And you feel overwhelmed. And we pause for a second, or maybe a semester, or maybe even a whole year. And we miss that moment to dream because discovery is hard. But what I've learned in the last few years is that figuring out what you're called to do, figuring out what God uniquely put you on the planet to do, is not an act of discovery, it's an act of recovery. It's usually an act of you rescuing something that you loved and you lost. Something that maybe someone who mattered to you told you didn't matter. A friend of mine named Liz is in her 40s, and she said, hey, when I was in the 8th grade, I used to love to dance. It was my favorite thing to do. And one day my mom pulled me aside and said, hey, you're not going to be a dancer, right? Like, that's not in the cards for you growing up, right? Do you think Liz danced a whole lot after that? Of course not. And some of you have had conversations like that with your parents. Some of you have picked the wrong major because somebody in your life said to you, how will you ever make money with that? And that they're talking about is the thing you feel called to do. It's this quiet spark that's still in you, and right now you kind of want to throw up, and you're like, please stop talking about that. Talk about Galatians or something, not that. Some of you have had that conversation, but here's the problem. And I know the temptation as a parent. I'm a parent. I've got 2 amazing daughters. They're hilarious, Ellie and McCrae. And my kids are really, really funny. They say wild things. I mean, one night at the dinner table, they talked about they want to get a cat. And they love princesses, so we'd probably name it Tangled. Like, I know the Disney princess cartel very well. Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, Cinderella. Cinderella runs Disney like Jay-Z runs New York. I know princesses. I do. My house key that my kids picked out is 3 princesses. And if you know I have kids, that's adorable. If you don't know I have kids, I'm a creeper. It's true. But we can't get a cat because my wife's allergic, so McCrae scrunched up her little face. Said, well, we can get a cat when Mom is dead. I mean, scientifically, she's right. But I don't know if that's the best thing to say to my wife. Hey, baby, when you die, instead of a funeral, we're going to have a cat party. We're just going to make it rain felines up in there. Oh, YOLO. Oh, we probably shouldn't say that, but my kids are crazy and wild. And as a parent, you don't want your kids to discover they don't have a certain talent at the wrong moment. You don't want them to discover they can't sing on American Idol. Right? Like, don't you always feel bad when somebody comes on and goes, I've had 22 years of vocal lessons. Everybody says I'm amazing. And then they're like, ah! You don't want that. But here's the issue. When a parent or a professor, a teacher or a pastor tells you what you can't be, They're predicting a future they don't control. They don't know what you look like at 25. They don't know what you look like at 35 or at 45 or at 55, do they? I mean, what if Michael Jordan's dad, sophomore year of high school, when he gets cut from the varsity team, pulls him aside and says, hey, basketball's not in the cards for you. You're not meant to play basketball. And he listens, and he becomes an accountant, and he dominates work league. I mean, he would. Like, after work, just dunking on fools. Other accountants would be like, that guy's awesome. He's a bad accountant, but so good at alley-oops. But we listen to those words sometimes, and we believe them. And we let our dream go by, and so we've got to rescue it. We've got to recover it. And when you realize that dreaming's about recovery, not discovery, it changes the whole conversation. Instead of asking this big questions like, what do I want to do with my life? You say, what have I done in my life that I loved? And you get to see this very small, personally designed set of results for you. And in that moment, you can start to see the way God changes big lives with small, little moments. And I saw this illustrated one time by Mercedes. See, Mercedes had a problem. They have this car, $500,000 sports car. It's the SLR. And they wanted every inch to be amazing. But they had troubles with the ignition. Because if you think about it, they haven't changed that much in the last 100 years. Every other inch of the car has MPG, safety, onboard computers. Like, my kids have like a 19-point harness to get into the car. You have to be a Cirque du Soleil acrobat to put my kids into the car. When I was a kid, my parents would tie me into the back of their Beetle Bug with like a length of rope. They'd say, hey, think safe thoughts. We're going to go on the highway today. Just be careful. My kids have like an eyebrow airbag. Like, if the car gets hit, this little airbag comes right here and saves their face. Cars have changed, but not the ignition. You take your key, you put it in, you turn and you go. But about 10 years ago, manufacturers started doing push-button ignitions. And that's different. That's interesting. But Mercedes couldn't copy this because the Accord has that. The Camry has that. So the first thing they did was they put their button in the gear stick. Most people put it in the dash, but they put theirs in the gear stick. But it was the next thing they did that was the brilliance. The next thing was the small thing that changed everything. They took a tiny metal hinge and they put it on top of the button. Do you know what that did to the experience? It changed it from turning on a car into launching a missile. Think about it. Every movie you've ever seen when a hero is up against impossible odds, what's the first thing he does? He flips open that switch, he presses down, he saves the world. Hunt for Red October, Crimson Tide, Top Gun, probably even Battleship. I don't know, I'm not going to see a movie based on a board game. I'm waiting for Connect 4. Red or black, who will win? I hope they get Rihanna, the actress one, not the singer one. Woo! Talented. But that's what our heroes do. And so suddenly, I'm not turning on a car in the morning. I'm launching a missile from my driveway. And there's power and emotion associated with that. And I knew Mercedes had understood what they'd done when I saw their brochure. On one page was a picture of the engine, $10 million, 10 years to develop. On the other page, a close-up of the metal hinge. Probably cost $3, 30 seconds to develop. So why did it get attention in the brochure? Because they knew that's what changed everything. So when I talk to college students, I beg them, don't get stuck looking for these big eureka moments from God. Listen for the hinge moments. Those small moments where you think you know what life's going to be about. You think you know what this semester is going to be, and then whoop, God hinges you in another direction. You think you know what's going to happen, and then a Mumford & Son lyric, a conversation with a stranger, something that happens on the quad goes whoop, and hinges you somewhere else. And they happen all the time, just most of us are too busy to hear them or see them. I mean, that's how Stuff Christians Like started to change. It was just going to be a snarky blog. Like, it was a ridiculous blog about how, like, when the pastor says hold hands, let's not interlink digits, we're not at the roller skating rink. Like, I don't know you, you're a plumber with a mustache. This is good. This is creepy. Like, this is for girlfriends. This is for plumbers. It's a pretty simple rule at church. Let's maintain that. Or wishing I had a shirt that said I direct deposit my tithes so that I didn't feel like a sinner when I passed the bucket constantly at church. Because they don't know, and you can't yell that. It's awkward. People frown on that. So it was a ridiculous concept, but on blog post number 60, an atheist left a comment. And he said, hey, I've never seen faith talked honestly. Yeah, I've never seen it talked about honestly. And if I wasn't an atheist, this is the type of Christian I'd like to be. And all of a sudden, one comment, 2 sentences on a blog post went, whoo, maybe this is a ministry. Maybe there's something I'm supposed to do here. And I had another one of those happen with my daughter, Ellie. She was 5 at the time, and we were looking at a book about weather. She'd love to be a meteorologist, even though she says hurricane as hurricane, which is like a combination of a hernia and a hurricane. It is the worst storm. You want no part of a hurricane. Like, there is no balm for that, I assure you. But so one day we're looking at this book about weather, and on one of the pages a picture of drought and famine, and there's a starving African child there, and she says, "What's that, Dad?" And that's one of those moments you wish you could be like, your mom would love to tell you that answer. But she wasn't around, so I said, well, that little boy's starving to death. He doesn't have enough food to eat. Then she got kind of quiet, and she said, well, but that's pretend, right? That's not real, right? Because you see, 5-year-olds who grew up eating 3 meals a day can't fathom other 5-year-olds don't have that same experience. Like the Ellie in Atlanta didn't understand that the Ellie in Africa starved to death or the Ellie in Asia was sold into slavery. That didn't make sense to her. And as I thought about their question from her, I started to feel like she was really saying to me, hey, do other people know about that, Dad? Are you doing anything about that, Dad? And the truth is, at the time, I wasn't. I had this growing blog and stuff Christians like, but it was just about me. It was this me parade. And so I asked the readers one day on a random Monday in November to help me raise $30,000 to build a kindergarten in Vietnam. And that's a lot of money to me. Like, I don't have that in my pants right now. That's a lot of money. And we thought it would take us like 8 weeks, maybe 3 months to raise $30,000. Do you know how long it took us to raise that much money? 18 hours. We raised $30,000 in 18 hours. If you didn't read the blog that day, you missed it. And it was one of those classic moments where you undersize God. Have you ever done that to him? You go, God, you're huge, you're massive, you're just not as big as my parents' divorce. God, you're the creator of all space and time. When people say you're boring, I say, look at the platypus or the narwhal. It's the unicorn of the sea. I'm telling you, if we take it for granted, he'll take it back like the unicorn. We need to really respect the narwhal. That's a side note. That's a bonus lesson. But God, you're huge, you're so creative, you're just not as big as my graduation plans. Like, I made God a really good $29,000 God, but he wasn't $30,000 big. I mean, that's crazy. And so we had done that to God, so we decided to double down and raised another 30. I built 2 kindergartens. And last November, my wife and I got to stand here in this Vietnam village and see these kindergartens. And that started with a question from a 5-year-old. I mean, the truth about your life, here's the truth. You only control one line. You control the starting line. You have no control over the finish line. God is going to take your lives in places you can't imagine. No honest 7-year-old goes, you know what? At 21, I had it all figured out. Like, I knew everything I was going to do. I had it all laid out. No. How miserable would that life be? But you do control that starting line. You do control that first recognition of that first Hinge moment. And I don't know what yours are going to be. There's probably going to be some today in class with conversations with friends. Don't miss that. We get so loud that we miss those. The second thing that I'd say we need to be really, really careful about is what I'd call fear. And here's the reality about fear. Fear only gets loud when you do things that matter. Fear will only bother you if you do something that matters. If you say you want to be average or ordinary, if you say, you know what, I want to rock vanilla right into the grave, fear's going to give you a free pass. Fear never bothers people who are average. But the moment you dare to stand up and do something, the moment that you say, okay, God didn't send me to Lipscomb for average. He sent me because I'm supposed to do something. That's when fear is going to get loud. And a friend of mine challenged me on this. A friend one day said, hey, what do your voices tell you? Like, what do your voices tell you? And that's a weird question. It is. And I said, well, what do you mean, my voices? And he said, well, I've asked 1,000 people that question, and nobody has a positive internal voice. Like, nobody's internal voice says, you sure are skinny enough. You should change your major. You'd kill at that. People are going to love that new thing you're doing. You're the best person for that. No, nobody's voice says that. Instead, our voices ask questions, or they share doubts and fear. And so I started to think about that. Like, one of my voices when I wrote Quitter, because Quitter's more of a business book, more of a here's how you figure out how you do your dream. One of my voices says, who are you to write a serious book? Your first book wasn't even a real book. It's illustrated. There's a unicorn in that book. That's not a book. And it's true. People come up to me sometimes and they go, I love stuff Christians like. I keep it in my bathroom. And I go, oh, okay. That's a weird compliment. Thanks for that. I'll pretend you read while you shower. Otherwise, gross. But I started to hear that voice of, who was I to jump shelves, to change from Christian inspiration over to the business shelf? And maybe you've heard that too. One of the things you always hear when you start something new is, who are you to do that? Who are you to think you can do that? And so I started to ask people that question. I started to ask audiences that question. I asked this group of youth ministers that. I said, hey, what are your voices of fear and doubt? And one guy said, well, my voice of fear says I can't be a good youth minister because I don't have my own kids. Do you see what a great trap that is? You only have to wait 13 years until you have a teenager to be a good youth minister. Like, you can get a gun in like an hour and a half, but to be a youth minister, 13-year process. Are you kidding me? I talked to a group of women, and some of them said, well, I hear this voice of, who are you to be in ministry? You're a woman. And they felt that doubt. They asked another room, I said, hey, what do your voices tell you? And a guy said, my voice says, wait until your dad gets home. Wait until your dad gets home. He hadn't lived at home for 30 years, but he still carried that voice of fear. And so I don't know what your voices are in here. Maybe your voice is about graduating in the job market. Like, it's not easy right now. Nashville is challenging. I mean, Nashville didn't even get hit as hard as other cities, but it's still not easy. It's still not a given that you're going to land a job that's in your field. So maybe your voice says, what does it matter? You're not going to find work. Maybe your voice is trying to keep you in a major you don't belong in. You know, the worst letters I get are from folks like this. This dentist wrote me. He said, hey, I've been a dentist for 2 years, and I hate it. And I knew I didn't want to be a dentist during dental school, but it was too late. I didn't want to disappoint my parents or my family. There's all this momentum. And so now I'm $200,000 in debt. And the only way to get out of being a dentist is to keep being a dentist. And he was stuck. I don't know. Maybe you're not stuck right now. Maybe you're that sophomore that I hate following on Facebook that's like, I got it all figured out, and here's my photos of my vacation and my shoes. Like, do you have that friend that it's like their best life ever? It's like their own reality show, and you're like, I know you cry sometimes. Like, that's the problem with Facebook. They don't have a sad button. It's just like. And we create these fake personas of ourselves, and we think life is perfect that way. So I really want to challenge you on that. I don't know what fear or doubt you have, but I know you have some. And when that happens, I want you to remember the simple truth. You see, our God isn't in the business of better. He's not in the business of improved. He's in the business of new. That's what you are, new. The old is gone, the new has come. New. And that's not just new once. Don't believe that idea of like, there's the cross and you're new, and then you collect dust from that moment on. No, you're new each day, and some days you need to be new each minute. Some weekends you need to be new that very weekend. I mean, sometimes, have you ever had one of those weekends where you're like, okay, I can't go to church for like 3 weeks after that. Like, I need a good 3 weeks between me and that situation so I can they'll be able to tell, like, people will know, they can sense it. No, you're new. And more than that, you're something else. And this is what I'll end with, because sometimes when we chase dreams, especially in this town, we chase them to get people to tell us we have value, or that we matter, or that we're worth something. And sometimes in this town, we chase them for fame. This is kind of a fame town. And that was something I struggled with. And I think fame is the worst drug in Christianity right now. I think it's just wrecking so many young students I see, so many young leaders. And you only need like 2 followers on Twitter to become a jerk. Like, that was my threshold. I have a low jerk threshold. It's very low. I'm pretty accomplished that way. But one day I said, hey, God, I want my story to give me fame. I want my life to generate fame. You know what he said back? Before I say that, I've only spoken here once before, so I don't know what phrase you guys use on campus to say God talked to you that makes you not look weird. Like, is it the Holy Spirit impressed on you, truth was shared? Like, whatever phrase makes me not look like a snake handler. If you could put that in your head while I finish that story, that would be incredibly helpful to me, because I don't handle snakes. I don't. So I said, God, I want fame. I want my story to give me fame. I felt like God laughed. Not at me, but with me. He said, fame? The creator of the universe knows your name. The Alpha and Omega, the entire galaxy knows who you are and what you care about. That's as famous as you're ever going to be. Whose acknowledgement of you is going to stand up next to mine? And he's right. I'm already famous. I'm on stage right now in a room full of famous people. God follows you on Twitter. He has a Facebook fan page about you, and he likes. You're so famous, he sent his son for you. He sent a rescue mission for you. That's real fame. That's lasting fame. And as the world tries to tell us it's not, that culture tries to tell us there's other sorts of things that are going to satisfy. There's not. In college, out of college, there's no girlfriend or boyfriend or husband or wife that's going to be able to satisfy that. There's no job. There's no dream outside of God that's going to satisfy that. And I don't want you to miss that. I don't want you to miss that we have a God we will never outdream. You will never in your college career bring something to God and have him go, I mean, I'm big. I'm huge, like Grand Canyon, like with my breath big, but that thing, that's too big for me. I'm not a God that's big. You'll never outdream God. And so that's my hope. I mean, I think your generation is going to change things in radical, radical ways. I was a blogger in a kitchen and got to do something crazy in Vietnam. I can't wait to see where God kind of takes you on the twists and turns. But I want you to remember, listen for those small moments. Don't get lost looking for Eureka. Don't get lost looking for lightning. And don't believe that voice that tries to tell you your identity. You're a work of art. You're an heir to the throne. You're the prodigal son returned, who returned not to a position of working, but to a position of family. Have you ever thought about that? He wrecks his life. He comes home, and instead of punishment, he gets a party. I don't know about your parents, but my parents never once fixed a problem I committed with a party. Like, I got caught shoplifting in 9th grade on the way to a youth group leaders retreat. I had a smidge of hypocrisy in my heart. And I don't remember that day that clearly, but I'm almost positive my dad wasn't like, party time, got you from jail, woo, so proud, here's a fatted calf. I mean, we didn't have fatted calves, that would have been weird. But I didn't get a party. That's the God we get. That's who you get to leave this room and dream with. And so my hope is that you'll keep doing that. And you'll listen for those small moments. And you won't listen to the voices. Let's pray.